You know, when I first found out that He Who Fights with Monsters is a very underknown book series, my mind was blown. I thought that after reading the first couple of books, I was going to go online and do some research and find out that the author is extremely well known. Find out that this was a huge series that I just somehow didn't discover up until now. But it has barely a cult following, a very excited cult following in a very niche genre, but it is not widely known, and I think that is absolutely tragic because I'm here to tell you that this is one of the best book series, one of the most engaging and original and fun series that I have ever read. I've read quite a few so far, but in this video, I'm just going to talk about books 1 through 3 and try to tell you in the first part of this video why I think you have to read these. Not only if you are a lover of fantasy and the magical and the mystical, but also a video game lover. And if you like things like Ready Player One or Sword Art Online or things of that nature, why this will just capture you to a point that you are not going to be able to put it down. Now, He Who Fights with Monsters so far is a 10-book series, although I imagine there will be plenty more, written by the author Shirtaloon, aka Travis Deverell. They were originally self-published online chapter by chapter until they were eventually picked up by a publishing house, and they belong to the LitRPG genre, a very new and niche genre that combines books with video games and imagine scenarios in which either people get teleported into video games or to where they have a magic set much like video games with a HUD and different power ranking and scale. And it's a very interesting way to read a book that lends itself very much to fast-paced combat and power scaling, that in a long series like this makes the journey that you go on with the character growing from nothing into probably godlike in the end of it, but at least by the end of book 3, very powerful, really, really fun. Now, the book follows the main character, Jason Asano, an Australian man of Japanese descent that gets sucked from his world into a different dimension. But you don't realize at first that he is in a different dimension. It starts out with him waking up naked in a hedge maze, and he has a HUD. He can see his health bar, he can see his mana, he can see what powers and abilities he has. When he kills something and he loots it, it appears in his inventory, and he has an inventory. It is essentially like waking up and being in Skyrim or Baldur's Gate or something similar to that. When you first start reading the book and you don't know anything, you think maybe he did get transported into a game. But it is later on that we find out that he is transported into an alternate dimension similar to his world, except where magic is in abundance. It is from here that he meets some adventurers, and I don't say adventurers and as in like the Skyrim, I used to be an adventurer like you.
I used to be an adventurer like you. Then I took an arrow in the knee.
Actual adventures that are part of what is called the Adventuring Society, because monsters are real in this world and magic is real. Much like any video game where you get quests, you can get quests or missions to go out and kill monsters that are ravaging the poor folks that live around where you are. He makes some friends, has some companions, forms a team, gets alliances, political intrigue, action, adventure. This really has it all. And I'm going to get to all of that. Now, I made comparisons to Ready Player One and Sword Art Online, and they aren't like very similar to that. It's just a very basic, if you like Ready Player One, but you want something more fantasy with kind of like the winks and nods, then this is for you. It's fantasy, but reads like a modern novel without all of the linguistics that you would need to know to get into Lord of the Rings. You don't have to read like the Silmarillion in order to understand what is going on in this world, because Jason Asano is transported into this world from another world, so all the exposition you need comes to him from other characters that are quite literally explaining the world to somebody who has no fucking idea what any of this is, just like us, the reader. It's a wonderful way to get exposition without it feeling like a shoehorned in specifically for you, the reader, which honestly you don't normally get in fantasy, and I feel is really lacking. And sometimes a barrier for people getting into fantasy is the language that they use and how long it takes to really adapt to this world that you are reading. And sometimes, you know, when you're reading it, stop being a movie in your head. But because he's transported in this new world and is quite literally a fish out of water, when he meets the trio of Gary, Rufus, and Farah in the beginning of this and they explain the world to him, it makes complete sense and does not stand out and take you out of the immersion of the story. Now, I touched on it a little bit, but one of the selling factors of a story like this, of LitRPG, and especially of He Who Fights with Monsters, is the power scaling and ranking system that is used in this. When he is first transported in this world, he is essentially, if you want to think about it in the terms of a video game, an NPC. Very squishy, no powers, no abilities. You know, light punches hurt him. He almost gets killed with a shovel to the head. But as the series goes on and as this trilogy of books 1 through 3, he collects powers through essences, which then diverge into what is his primary power set. And he gets awakening stones to get more powers. And as he progresses, killing more monsters and getting more XP, essentially, he goes up to Iron rank and Bronze rank towards the end of this trilogy. And beyond that, there's Silver, Gold, and then Diamond rank, as we know of so far at least. And one of my favorite things about this is seeing the way that these different ranks operate in the world and carry themselves and interact with higher ranks or lower ranks, and how that affects their standing in the political climate and in the social structure around the area that this book takes place. And when we hear about Diamond rankers, they're almost like mythical figures. And it's a lot like games like World of Warcraft with levels and leveling areas of like 10 levels to 10 levels. It doesn't matter how much better of a player you are or a fighter. If you are like a level 5 and you try and fight a level 20 monster, you're just going to get your ass kicked. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. You have to run. And that's what it is like in this book. But there's no montage sequence within He Who Fights with Monsters. Jason never has like a montage sequence where 3 or 6 or 8 months pass or 2 years pass where you just you come back to it and he's no longer an Iron rank, he's now a Silver rank and a badass. You see every single little bit of him becoming an adventurer, him getting all of his essences and awakening stones, him figuring out his power set and his abilities. Every single minute of his adventure you read, and most of the time I would get bored with that. I would just want to skip ahead and know what happens and see all the cool stuff. But in this, I want to see every single aspect of him becoming stronger, because I'm confident that by the end of the series, he's going to be one of the most powerful beings in the universe, maybe multiple universes. And I want to see every single way that the writer got him there that makes sense. But who is Jason as a character? As I said, Jason is transported from Earth. We never learn why. We learn some backstory on him. He is a smart kid. He's in his early 20s, but he never really amounted to anything. He dropped out of college and he was just an assistant manager at like fucking Staples or Office Max or something like that. He had a life that wasn't exactly going anywhere, because what we learn about him is that he was in a deep depression because his lifelong love and his girlfriend cheated on him with his brother, which... holy shit. Jason comes into this world seeing it as a restart. Imagine a kid leaving his school and going to a different high school or especially a different college and deciding, okay, I'm going by my middle name now and I'm just going to have a different personality and be a different person. This is a fresh start for me. This is how Jason goes into this world. He's extremely charismatic, but almost to a point that he sets people on edge. But he does that on purpose. He's weird and he diverts conversations with his weirdness, and being an outworlder, that's what they call people that aren't from this planet. Apparently that happens sometimes. And they get a power set to adapt to the planet. I don't actually think I explained that to you. That's kind of important, but I think you get it. You're smart. If you're watching this video, you're smart. But they get a power set that helps them adapt to the new place they're on, and that is why he has, you know, the inventory and the UI and the health bar and the mana bar, because it is adapting, because he understands video games, so they gave him video game powers to understand this new world that he is in as an outworld. But anyway, as an outworlder, he is the talk of the town. Doesn't matter that he's an Iron rank, he is now conversing with Bronze rank and Silver rank and some even Gold rankers, because everybody's like, oh, this is an outworlder, very interesting. But he's also got more of a political keenness than other people on this world, because it's not a very politically savvy world. It is an action-packed world, a fighting world, and he comes from Earth. politics galore. Everything is about your social well-being and structure. So he comes into this and just runs circles around these people in that way. And yeah, I will be honest, sometimes things go a little bit too perfect for him in like everybody claps kind of moments that you see in memes and whatnot. Sometimes it takes me out of it a little bit. It might be the only aspect where every now and then I'll roll my eyes while reading, but 99% of the time I'm fine with it because he is treating this like a video game, and he's getting where he needs to in power scaling by treating it like a video game, and some dramatics are involved in that sometimes. From there though, I am going to delve into spoilers for this. So if you don't want any spoilers, if I've convinced you to go read the books, go read the first 3 and then come right back to the spot. If you have read them and you just want to hear my thoughts on it, stick around. But from that talk about Jason and treating this like a video game, first thing I'm going to talk about is Jason, and this trilogy is his struggle with humanity. Because he has the HUD and he is operating like a video game, he sometimes forgets that these people are real people. So there are moments like where he is in the arcade and he has people come after him that got sent after him to kill him or make a scene at the very least, and he murders them in cold blood. He gave some people a second chance, but either way, he threatened them, they left and came back, and he kills them just like that. He is forgetting some of humanity. And it is one of the first things that Rufus says to him, that he is going to be able to do incredible and special things, but he might lose himself along the way, and he needs to reckon with that. Throughout this, he struggles with not being a human anymore, becoming more powerful. His dark power set with his like necrotic abilities and to steal the life force directly from people, and people seeing him as evil, and he thinks he needs to embrace that in order to survive in this world. But through embracing that, he loses more and more of himself. I also love, and this is a little bit deeper into the plot, books 1 and 2 and 3 all stand on their own, but book 1 stands on its own. But when you go back and you read book 1 after completing the trilogy and realizing everything that had to do with the Builder cult and how everything led to the Builder cult, and it was this whole big worldwide dimension-spanning conspiracy. There are so many hints in the beginning to it being towards that, like with Anissa, the purity elf, and when they're going into the dimensional space and Farah dies at the end of book 1, and you're not sure what it is, but you're starting to get the sprinkles of the Builder cult in there and the Builder himself. But also within one of the very first chapters of book 1 where he's discovering his powers, and I love this part where Rufus, Gary, and Farah go out on a mission with Anissa, and he's left alone in that village. And very clearly, like a little side quest thing happens where he has to fight those like shark crab things that spew out of the astral space. And that is one of the first hints we get of what's going on with these astral spaces and the Builder cult siphoning off the power of this world. But in the beginning there, it just seems like a video game side quest that he has to complete in order to understand his powers and do things on his own. But as time goes on, we just realize what this means in the larger scale of things. And that connective tissue through all of it is amazing. Similar to that is all throughout book 1, we get cuts to Sophie and Belinda, and we don't know who they are, but we're slowly picking up pieces and learning who they are and liking them as characters. And at first I didn't like that, because I wanted to stick with Jason and Humphrey and Clive and all these people that you were meeting. And I was like, I don't want to spend more time with these random people. I don't like when narratives change from person to person. It's why I could never get into reading Game of Thrones, because I don't like multiple POVs. But then Sophie and Belinda became members of his friend group and into his actual party that he goes out and he hunts monsters with and goes into the Reaper trials with, and you care about them so much more because of the little snippets you got of who they were on their own without Jason within book 1. And I do love the slow build of the team. In most books like this, you'd think that he would have his team like halfway through book 1 so we can enjoy their fantastic dynamic and their adventures together. But in this, you don't really have his team until like partway through book 2. But you start to get hints of the team with Humphrey from the very beginning. And then you get Clive that comes in, who he initially starts to prank, and then they work together from the Magic Society so that he can understand him more. And then you see Neil without him ever actually getting named very early on, and he comes in last, but you quickly learn to care about him, even though I thought I wasn't going to give a shit about this guy I didn't know that was working with the Mercer kid, Thadwick. Then obviously you have Sophie and Belinda, who got their own chapters every now and then in book 1 to care about them. And then when they all come together, and they're like this phenomenal cohesive unit, and they all have relationship that work together, and they all back up each other. And I love that everybody is like, no, 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 you do not call Jason evil. He's a great guy. He's just troubled and he has an evil power set. And the fact that it has this slow build, just the way that the powers are a slow build, but you see all of it, shows incredible restraint from the author that has me excited to read all 10 and more that are going to come out of this series. And I was worried originally with 10 books. I was like, oh, I'm going to get tired of this way fucking before I get to 10 of these fucking things. But no, I didn't, because of this exact reason, the restraint of the author and feeding it out to you in slow chunks as it actually makes sense rather than forcing it to happen. And I do love all the characters. Like, I love the Gold Rangers that come in. I love Amir. I love the relationships that happen between Belinda and Jory. I love like the small side relationships like Belinda and Jory and Humphrey, and I can't remember her name right now, but the Purity Girl. There's a lot of great comedy within this between the characters. They're all so distinguishable and well written. The action is great to where I can visualize the action happening because it's so incredibly detailed while being fast moving, because it's not too descriptive, and then understanding the power sets in such a in-depth way because of the LitRPG nature of it. But on top of that, it's not just action. It is very, very character driven at the same time, and because of the slow nature of it, you care about all these characters very much, to the point that like when Farah dies at the end of the book 1, it's just devastating. And then when they eventually get into the Reaper trials at the end of book 2, it's so satisfying. And then in book 3, when they're fighting the Builder Cult and really taking it home to them, they all go into the Reaper trials for the last like half of the entire book. All feels worth it and earned. And then at the very end, when Jason sacrifices himself and dies to the Builder, and you kind of know what's going to happen because he's always had that revival token on him. You know he's going to be okay, but it makes sense, and it's an earned death and a sacrifice, because this entire series, this entire trilogy, I mean, he has been struggling with his humanity, and he makes the choice to save his friends so that they escape. And part of that is him treating it like a video game, kind of knowing that he's going to be okay and revive. But another part of it is him being like, this is the world I thrive in, and I know what might happen, that I will go home, but I need to sacrifice this life I have built for my friends. And it is a beautiful moment. This is easily, as you can tell, probably my favorite book series now. I'm just so captured by them, and I cannot wait to see where it goes from here. I cannot wait to see him become so incredibly powerful. I'm excited for the relationships. I'm excited to see where this team goes. I'm excited to see how he revives and where he comes back to. If he goes back to Earth, is he going to spend time on Earth? Who the fuck knows? But I can't wait. If you've made it this far, you've probably read at least these 3 books or this whole series and just want to see somebody else talk about it, because it is a very underrated and unknown series, and that needs to change. And I hope I can make any small change into that happen and get other people to read it. But thank you for watching. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Check out my other videos.